This is Matt Rosen, and this is The Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of The Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower our listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The Grit Mindset with Matt Rosen. I am your host. Here with me, I've got a good buddy and YPO mate of mine. His name is Mark Sinatra. He is the CEO of Aspen HR, and we're excited to welcome him to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, get us started. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So, like you said, CEO of Aspen HR, been a CEO for 16 years.
Nice.
And that experience has been solely focused on running HR outsourcing companies that provide HR compliance, payroll, health insurance support for small, medium-sized companies that don't have an in-house HR department. I also, for the last 5 years, I invest in what I call the entrepreneurship through acquisition asset class, which has been gaining a ton of momentum. Basically, what it means is, we invest in entrepreneurs who want to buy smaller companies, professionalize them, make them better, and have that as another way of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, in fact, that's where we met. You guys were my outsourced HR when I started my company.
That's right. And you guys, you've crushed it since then, and congrats on your growth.
Well, appreciate that. But today we're talking about you. So tell us, when was there a moment, maybe in your early childhood or mid-childhood, or when did you decide, hey, I want to be a CEO, I want to run a company? What kind of led you down that road?
That's a good question. So I've always had just a ton of random odd jobs, like going back to when I was, probably 10, 11 years old. And just random stuff.
Like what?
Selling magazines, mowing lawns, delivering newspapers, working like big time, like kind of corporate barbecues, like just random stuff. And so a couple lessons about that. One, it taught me the value of hard work.
Yeah.
And kind of reaping the rewards of that. But also it kind of taught me, okay, well, I was comfortable with putting that, that work in. It taught me how to interact with people.
Yeah.
And I kind of carried that through when I got through college, but even after college, I had jobs, with kind of larger companies, great place to start. Learned a ton, met some great people, but it just never was, at the end of the day, really fulfilling. And then it kind of dawned on me, when I was in business school, I did some consulting for what they call, I don't know what's still around, but small business development center, pro bono consulting to other entrepreneurs. And I remember I was doing some work with a local entrepreneur. He had developed some technology for the wheelbarrow, right? Just kind of kind of out of the blue, kind of random. But I was just I was just obsessed with the passion that he had for that small business.
For the
and
wheelbarrow.
that he was, and how he was trying to grow it and make it into something. And I kind of saw that as wow, I'm having an impact, trying to help him grow it. And I wanted to be on the other side of that at some point, whether it was as a founder or some other way. I wanted to be part of something entrepreneurial at some point in my career. And
Gotcha.
So that's when I started to kind of think about the different ways to get there.
Got it. So what was the newspaper you delivered? My first job was the Washington Post. So what did you do?
Well, it was actually the Washington Post too.
No
I grew up in Maryland.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So always learn something new or remember something new about every
getting up
guest.
early, and then having all the ink on your hands and all that stuff. So.
Did you ride a bike or deliver it by hand? I can still hit a doorstep from 60 feet.
Yeah, I hit a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Which that's why I probably didn't last too long there. But it was a good experience. Waking up that early kind of teaches you, to kind of gives you that discipline.
Yeah, you had to have a lot of discipline, and they drop it off at all different times. And sometimes I was lucky to get to school on time.
Oh yeah, I remember several days when my dad and I, would want to sleep in, and he would literally pour ice cold water on my feet to wake me up, which I didn't appreciate, but it was literally the only way I was going to get out of bed. So.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, I broke my leg. My parents had to do the route for like 10 weeks, and they're like, you quit.
Yeah.
Go collect the money for the time we
That's
did
right.
it. It's time for you to focus on school. So, no, but it teaches you a lot. So you went to college, went to business school,
Yep.
and doing some independent consulting, found a love for wanting to be on the entrepreneurial side of things. So tell us about how you got there ultimately.
So there was a classmate of mine who was researching this concept, called entrepreneurship through acquisition. At the time, listen, I was going through business school, had a ton of debt, right? That I took loans, right, to take out to attend because I went full time. So I didn't have the risk tolerance to necessarily start a company, but he was telling me about this concept where you can find a smaller business to run, right? Like so, 5 to 20 million in revenue,
Right.
Like 1 to 3 in cash flow, and you could find some investors to help support you to buy this business and then run it, earn some equity, and then you could run it for a long time, or you could monetize that equity through selling the business at some point. And I kind of looked at him. I said, you're kidding, right? Like this is like who in the world would actually like invest in me? Like I'm like in business school, right? I mean, like 20, 27 years old, 28, to go and find and run a business. And then I started doing some research, and I started reading about a bunch of other examples of case studies where people were actually doing this. And they, in a lot of cases they were doing successfully. In other cases, it wasn't successful, but still like there had been like a path of several other people that have pursued it. And that's kind of the light bulb for me. It was like, wow, this is something that not only do I want to do, that I'm going to do at some point in my career. And so that moment there, I spent the second year of business school kind of doing a ton more research, to try to find it. Ended up figuring out I wanted to partner with somebody to do it. I didn't feel comfortable with my work experience at the time. I wanted to find somebody that had more of a complementary background, a skill set, and personality. But I couldn't find that person. So long story short, I ended up taking a job at like one of those leadership, development programs with a venture-backed outsourcing company. Lo and behold, 30 days before I start, they sold the company to a public company. So, it financially just wasn't as attractive of an opportunity. I still ended up pursuing it. And about 45 days in, I remember working on a presentation for the CEO, smart guy, great guy. But ultimately, I was pulling an all-nighter, and it was, in my mind, it was something that, I could have probably have been a lot more efficient, right, if I was kind of managing myself. And for me, that was like, okay, I've got to get out of this and just go off my own and just, really see, what I could do in terms of, this entrepreneurship through acquisition, also known as search fund, this career path. And that's when I left that job over the period of the next few months, and then ended up diving into that world of search funds, and was able to convince, some investors to kind of help support me on that journey.
Now, did you know what company you were going to go after when you first went down that path? Tell our listeners a little bit about what a search fund actually does.
Yeah,
how you engage with them.
Yeah, I ended up raising enough capital to support my full-time search for up to 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Paid myself a below market salary. Was living in, Manhattan at the New York at the time. So, it's expensive, right? I was eating ramen noodles every night, and, just, trying to kind of scrape by. But I loved it, and I was kind of searching the entire country for deals that kind of fit the right criteria. And I had a business partner, a classmate of mine, a warden, who joined me. So, we were both, doing this search together. Looked at all different types of companies. So I didn't really know on the onset, okay, well, I was going to buy an HR outsourcing PEO business. But, so we looked at, I remember I was in California once looking at like a solar installation company. I remember, we were looking at a direct marketing firm up in Boston. So it kind of like varied, but we were looking for companies that obviously, had like some recurring or reoccurring revenue, decent EBITDA margins, no client concentration, like just all like the parameters you would look at, right, as an investor. But also like the secret sauce was like looking for a business that I could actually see myself like owning and running and myself and doing a good job of that.
Because ultimately, once you found the right company, you were going to become the CEO or managing partner.
Exactly. So finding companies where the seller did not have a succession plan in place, but was probably reaching that point in his or her life to like find not just liquidity, but also somebody to take over the business. That was really like what I would call like the ideal seller profile.
Got it. Yeah. So for those listening, you don't necessarily have to find your own thing. You can go find somebody else's that doesn't want to run it, and there are people that actually invest in you to do that. So you found the first company. What was that process like? Or maybe some of the challenges of going through both finding it and getting the owner to sell it to you?
Yeah. So I mean, it's really hard, particularly nowadays. Super hard to find companies that or that look good on paper, that are for sale, that you can engage with in that type of dialogue. Yeah. It's very competitive. Everybody, wants to do this now. And even back then, like it was very competitive. So thankfully, I had a job that was before business school for a short period of time, and that involved a ton of cold calling. So I was very comfortable, like just cold calling, picking up the phone, smiling and dialing, reaching out to folks via cold email. So it was a ton of outbound, going to conferences, just trying to drum up deal flow, obviously talking to brokers and bankers. This particular one is actually kind of a result of one of those efforts. So I remember, I was kind of interested in this, like I said, the HR, PEO industry, had cold emailed like an industry consultant, River Guide, right? Those folks are super connected in like, the industries. Had a great intro call. It was August, right? It's right around this time of year. Didn't hear back. Yeah. I mean, had a great conversation, but didn't really hear anything after 4 or 5 months. Then like right around like mid-January, like, she reaches out to me. So like, listen, I haven't forgotten about you. I've got the perfect opportunity. And, it was a situation where, just what I said, like the seller kind of getting into his late 60s, no succession plan, wanted liquidity. And she's like, when I he's telling me about it, I immediately thought of you as like, the perfect fit. Yeah. And that's kind of how it happened. So I think the lesson learned there is, like anything related to like just in general sales, marketing, be really specific about who you are, what you're looking for. And you have to stay, top of mind with those people, because timing is everything. You never know when those opportunities are going to come up, but when they do, you want that person to automatically think.
Yeah, you want to be the first call.
Yeah.
So can you share with us, any challenges of taking over from that seller and running that firm? Because that's ultimately what you did, right?
Yeah, it was a lot. How much time do we have? No, so I did the search out of New York. I grew up on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And, as luck would have it, the pun intended here, the company was based in Durant, Oklahoma. Okay. And, it's really, nice town. The people there are very nice, but definitely, somewhat of a difference,
it's
right?
A small market. It's very different than Manhattan.
It's a small market. So one of the biggest challenges was, I thought going into the deal that, okay, yep, understand it, it's based there, but we could really sell into the Dallas market, as an example. And the truth is, just wasn't the case. Got that insight wrong during due diligence. We just had a ton of just kind of headwinds, like being taken seriously, in the Dallas market and other cities. So decided, and of course, this overlaid with the recession. This is like back in like late 2008, 2009.
It's a good time to buy a company.
So really like challenging from a macro perspective, and also from a company perspective. Kind of realized at some point, like not too long after the deal closed, that okay, we may want to think about, either relocating the business. And this is before like we had all those collaboration tools like Slack, Teams, like before, like it was easy to work remote. And so, we thought, okay, we've got to relocate the business down to Dallas at some point. And that was a very, very challenging effort. It was obviously very hard on the employees impacted, which was, obviously we didn't take lightly. There was a lot of like redundancy that, we had to make sure that was transferred over. Like a lot of, it's the old adage, like, in these small companies, what's in here is not on here, right? So like, the processes, the know-how, So, setting up, different headquarters right down the highway here took several months. And then, had about, it was a ton of turnover. I mean, we had about 75%,
Oh, wow.
80%
And how many folks did you have?
employee turnover. At that time, it was about 40 or so of people. But, unfortunately, like in a service company, when you have that amount of turnover, it's very disruptive.
Yeah.
Obviously, very disruptive to the business, but most importantly, like very disruptive to the clients as well. So we had some client attrition that resulted in that. Ended up, about 3 years into the deal, we lost our largest client at the time, and a lot of it was due to the staff transition turnover we had. So it was just it was a huge struggle, like in the first couple years.
Gotcha. But as I understand it, you had a successful outcome at the end of that story, correct?
Yeah.
How'd that go down?
Yeah. So basically, the kind of the lowest point in the business was, like I said, about 2.5, 3 years after we bought it. And I remember like the board and I were thinking, okay, well, what do we do? Like, do we just like, move on,
shut it down,
sell it, and kind of just go separate ways? I said, listen, like, we can certainly do that. But if we look at some of these like leading indicators, like I think we're, going to start to turn the corner at some point. Like the sales pipeline was at record levels. Net Promoter Score was really good. So it's like, just give me, see what happens. Give me another year. And then that kind of led into like another 5 years after that.
Oh, wow.
And we were growing at a CAGR of 20+% all of those years, mostly organic. We had, I did 3 small tuck-in acquisitions like in the last 2 years. And so, that kind of led us to 2017 when, we were 9 years in the deal. Of course, all the models they never forecast to 9 years, right?
Yeah,
it's always okay,
3, like, 5, 7.
Yeah. But I think we ultimately got the business to the point that we originally thought we were going to get it to. And as a board, we said, okay, let's like test the market and see what the market has to offer, to monetize our investment. So we went through a full process in 2017, and then we sold to a private equity-backed competitor that was doing a kind of a structured roll-up of the industry.
Got it.
So I mean, it worked out. It worked out well. Certainly worked out a lot better than I thought it would after a couple years, into the deal and dealing with those challenges.
Well, it sounds like kind of maybe the lesson learned is, you can be successful, but sometimes it's going to take a little longer than you ever planned for. That's what I've seen across a lot of businesses.
Oh yeah, like the path is often like not linear, right? It's very rare it isn't linear. Like it's definitely a ton of like obstacles and things that you may not foresee that you have to deal with and navigate around. And so, I mean, like the key is like if you have that long-term or flexible approach to kind of get around that and get to your ultimate destination, it can be helpful.
Yeah, well, obviously you're on the grit mindset. So at some point during the show, I ask everybody who comes on, what does grit mean to you? Does it have anything special meaning as you think about the challenges you've been through? And I know maybe this leads us to the next part of your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like it's a lot of things. I mean, grit, first and foremost, it means taking ownership.
Yeah,
and
like that,
like not making excuses. It's like my sales team used to say, at least at the last company, like I want to, or I'm going to. And I would always correct them because it's like, okay, I will, right? And like just being definitive and not looking for, kind of to be rescued, and doing whatever it takes, right? To rolling up your sleeves, working till midnight, 2 a.m. if you need to, calling, an upset employee or calling an upset client yourself, like doing whatever it takes to at the end of the day, like get the job done is that simple.
Yeah, no, I like that definition. So if you would kind of share with us kind of the latest, part of the story. Obviously you sold your previous business to a larger competitor, but then you went off and became the CEO of another organization, and kind of walk us through what happened there.
Yeah. So I was the last company I was with them for about a year and a half
After the sale.
Yeah, and then and then they ended up selling actually a year after they bought us to a public company, and that is another lesson real quick is a lot of folks when they try to think about their entrepreneurial path, think, okay, well, do this for like 5-10 years or whatever, sell, and then I'll do something else. Well, I mean, that can often be the case, but also, you should think about, well, the company that's going to buy you, like there could be some great opportunities there, and that was kind of a bit unforeseen to be honest. So in any event, when the public company came in, I figured, okay, been doing this for a little while now. Let me kind of recalibrate, take a break.
Yeah.
And I was helping out a buddy of mine on a small SaaS company, trying to get that turned around. So I was just like looking for like different like random projects here and there. A lot of soul searching. The one piece of advice a lot of folks gave me was, listen, don't jump into the first thing that somebody pitches you, right? Like just take your time, which is hard to follow, right? Because like if you're type A, you're used to doing stuff like it's very counterintuitive to like just take a step back and reflect and be thoughtful and intentional. Long story short, this current company, so Aspen HR, I actually got introduced to the founders via mutual industry connections, and really liked the people. And I just thought like this is a great team of investors and folks that I can see myself building a great business with. So that's number one. Did I think about starting my own company or buying another company 100%? Absolutely. Like, I mean, there were a lot of ideas and things that I had been working on, but what I determined was it's really rare to find other folks that have like the same vision and values.
That's tough.
And like just and when you find that, like you should seize that opportunity if you can. And that's really what happened in this case. So I joined the business as invested some growth capital in the company, joined the business as the CEO. That was about 5 years ago. That was like basically September of 2020, which we all remember. Like you kind of turn on the news and the world's ending, and you get and for me, I was like, okay, I'm not doing anything. Like I'm getting crazy, like anxious, like just watching the news every day. I need to do something. And so it was really good timing for them because they had just started the company 2 years before. And, it was just still very much a startup at the time, really, really small. But, I saw a ton of potential to kind of, take it to the next level.
Yeah. So how are things going today? What's been the biggest challenges in growing? Earlier, we were talking before the show, you said things are going well, things are picking up, but maybe share with us a challenging story that's been along the path of the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think, we've done very well from a growth perspective, but a couple things. So the companies, we're remote. And so, when I joined in 2020, the company was already remote, but we had a lot of folks in California.
Okay.
What ended up happening is, we started like 21, 22, started kind of scaling more, and we just had to find the best people we could find. So, that is the one benefit of being remote, like from a hiring perspective, but really, really challenging. Like to build culture.
It's tough.
To build relationships.
Totally remote. Get it.
And so that's definitely been, I think, the biggest challenge by far is because of the growth we've had, like, how can we do a better job of like, building like that shared vision, communicating that, building culture and engagement. I mean, in terms of like a specific like story about that, I mean, there's not one that particularly comes to mind, but it's something that I can tell you, like we work really, really hard, and we need to work harder. We need to do a better job of that for sure. What we've done recently, we've done a lot more a lot more travel. We've done a lot more in-person meetings, get-togethers, a lot more so than we did like the first couple years I was there, for sure.
So has that helped with the culture building and the shared vision?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. So we do in-person orientation. We try to batch up our new hires now, and a few times a year we'll do in-person orientation here in Dallas, and do that for a couple days. Where I'm involved in every aspect of that, and then we'll do departmental meetings, in person and on site during different times of the year. Then we do an annual meeting for the entire business as well, and so we'll do that at least once a year over a course of a few days.
Well, you've obviously had a lot of years to develop your grit and tenacity from cold calling to early jobs. What do you see as a path, or what are the challenges in instilling grit within your team? And have you been able to overcome that?
That is a really good question. There's a good part of me that thinks grit is developed at a younger age.
Yeah.
And so a couple thoughts on that. Just from my experience, part of why I wanted to do those jobs, those random jobs. I mean, I worked at a yogurt store too, by the way. I saw my dad. He was worked for IBM for years, and I just remember him often coming home late at night, after dinner, leaving early in the morning, and subconsciously or consciously, I was like, wow, okay, that's the model to get ahead.
Yeah,
it's just what I observed, it's what I knew, and so thankfully, whether he realized it then or not, that observation kind of informed my view on grit and diligence and work ethic. Just try to work harder than the next guy, right? And so, but if you don't have that type of experience or mentorship, how do you install grit?
Yeah.
How can you become grittier?
Yeah.
As you age and as you're more open? I think you can, but the key will be having a learner mindset.
Yeah, I like that.
So if it's a big thing that's talked about in the state. I don't know if you went through Stegen.
Familiar with it.
Yeah. So talk about the learner knower mindset, and if you think about it, we are all rewarded most of our lives for knowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take a test, you do well, great job.
Yeah.
But when you get into the workplace, and particularly when you get into leadership, you have to kind of switch a little bit and become much more vulnerable and understand what you don't know and be open to learning more. And I think the folks that are able to install grit and quote unquote become grittier or learn grit are the ones who have that learner mindset. They show up and they ask questions.
Yeah.
They show up and they're vulnerable, and they're not defensive when there's constructive feedback.
Yeah, they're not
given.
defensive about not knowing, and they take the impetus to teach themselves and ask for help where they need it. No,
Yeah, exactly. So I think as a leaders, we have to create that safe environment for those employees to feel safe, to be vulnerable, to admit hey, I don't know, I want to get to this. I want to be promoted in 2 years. What do I need to do?
Yeah.
Right. So as a leader, you have to extract that vulnerability from them.
Yeah.
But I think if you could do that, you've engendered a ton of trust, and you can help build the next wave of leadership in your company.
No, that's awesome guidance. So, we're kind of running short on time here. Are there any kind of final thoughts you have to share with our audience on grit, or anything we didn't cover?
Yeah, I think the one thing I can think of is it's a very hard journey, right? Like anything in life, to grow a business, to be successful in whatever you're doing from a professional perspective. The only thing I'd say is back when we had that really tough downturn as a business that I talked about earlier, it also kind of coincided with some other big personal challenges I had. And I think back to it, and it it is very easy for people to lose sight of that and to not take care of yourself when you're so focused on like your your job, your career, your company. And the only thing I can say is like you have to keep a very balanced perspective and think about on the three aspects, the work, family, personal, and ensure that you're optimizing that, you're doing the best job you can on all of those three facets.
Yeah, don't lose sight of why you're working.
Don't lose sight of why you're working. And it's tough, right? I mean, it's easy for me for us to say that here and preach to everybody to do that. And candidly, like, I could do a much better job of that today. But that is I think the most important thing that I want to kind of instill in the folks here is, zoom out. It's important to zoom out, whether it's every week, every month. Take inventory and be real with yourself if you're really, spending enough time on yourself, mentally, physically, and also with your family as well.
Yeah. Well, those are great words of wisdom. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show. I wish you much success with Aspen HR. I'm sure you guys are going to continue to crush it. For our listeners out there, hopefully you have some great takeaways from Mark's success story, but also the challenges he shared. So we're going to go ahead and sign off from this week's episode of The Grit Mindset. Stay gritty out there.